Hey, everybody. Welcome to another session of Awaken Your Work Life. I am Julie Murphy, and I am the author of a book called Awaken Your Wealth. Money is the result of the other choices in your life for building your life from the inside out. So from your heart space, from your work life, your family life, your personal life. And today, my friend Karen over here is going to assist us yet again in helping us really get our heads and our hearts around what it is in our work lives and how we get to the next right step for us so that we're really choosing our work life from a place of our hearts and our consciousness so that more money can actually show up in your world, because money doesn't stay if it's not aligned with your heart.
No.
Karen, tell everybody about yourself, please.
Hey, hi, everybody. Glad to be back. I'm loving these sessions. My company is called Beyond Blind Spots. I'm also the founder of a 6-piece capsule collection, a sustainable capsule collection called Zoe Goes. And my mission in the world is to help people express themselves fully so that they can just experience their lives and feel like they've been contributors, really, and grab that abundance where it's sitting for them.
Because it's out there for us. And we don't realize how easy it is. I sat in some ceremonies over the weekend with some shamans doing some inside work. And one of the shamans had shared it was a day of prayer and forgiveness in a ceremonial form. And the shamans really talked about how that to really feel a sense of wholeness, that we need to really be in a place of service, that if we're not coming to the world and in our work and our career from a place of what our unique abilities are, that we are the only person that has this wiring. So like, who would have thought that my freak flag would be combining spirituality and finance, to remember that the human being is the most important piece, and finance has completely like wiped that out, that it's about the numbers, it's about the rate of return. And it's about time that we bring humanity back into finance. And what I have come to learn over 25 years of doing this, which good thing I'm not that old. No.
Yeah, how can you be 19 and doing this work? I don't understand.
Oh, I know. It's so silly. But it's about the fact that so much more abundance and money and prosperity comes to us in our lives when we have the courage to find and to choose to pivot and to shift, when we know what we're doing is not shifting ourselves. And there's lots and lots of trauma going on these days. And projection of the unhealed stuff that's going on within each of us. And just know that if you're one of those people that's in that reactivity place, that it's just because it's time to pivot. It's time to choose differently. It's time to follow what your heart's been trying to tell you for quite some time.
Yeah. And you know what? Here's the thing. Like, I know there are people out there thinking, oh yeah, that's so much easier said than done. Like, choose what your heart's saying.
Maybe I know, Julie, what are you smoking?
Yeah, right? Exactly. Maybe we want to back that up just a little bit and talk to people about truth. Right? And just taking a look. Here's the thing, right? Nobody else has to know that you've stopped to take a look at it. Right? And one of the things that you can really do is get yourself to resources so that you don't feel so alone. Julie's got fabulous books, and weeks of lessons and conversations with people to help you see what's possible and that you're not alone. And I just like to say that, when you're trying to fool yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
You know it. And you also know when there's a disconnect between your head and your heart, right? You know when you're taking actions, but it's not really what you want to do. When you are saying things that you don't really believe,
Right.
And that's all we're asking you to do, is to choose what you do believe, right? To choose what's really in your heart. Now, how do we take that first step, Julie? How do we get off the edge of that diving board?
You have to picture the dream. You have to really find, I call it your compelling reason to change. And that compelling reason to change is to dream the new dream. And without the mind. So here's what it is. Our heart allows us to tap into those dreams. And then what happens is we bring it up to our head, and then we go, but. And we think of all the reasons why that's not realistic. But what I've come to learn, and probably the best example of this that's shown up in my life recently, is that I never really knew how everything was going to show up. But in my personal life, I had kept holding the space in the container so that the highest and best occurred for me, my kids, and my ex-husband. That despite everything, that the highest and best for all of us showed up. And there was a major pivot point about 4 or 5 weeks ago. And it's a whole new reality now. And it's beautiful. And it's almost like, did that just really happen? Like, you almost like want to pinch yourself, because I've been holding that space for 3 years. And it doesn't, can it happen fast? It absolutely can happen fast, but we have to understand it's not in our timing, it's in divine timing.
Yeah, always. You know, I heard you say that you have to be willing to like look at the dream or create the dream. And I know there are a lot of people who are like, either I'm afraid to dream because it never works out, it'll never work, or they don't know how to dream. And for me, I would ask them to go back, rewind some more. And when they were younger, or what were some of the things that excited them? What were some of the things they were curious about? What were some of the things that excited them? And just tease that out a bit, the look at it again, because it doesn't go anywhere.
Well, you know, it's another one I always ask, because sometimes we can attach to that negativity a little bit more than the positivity. So sometimes I'll ask clients when I'm sitting with them, like, do you have any regrets? Because we can go, for some reason, we can go to that place really fast. Like I remember back in the day, I always regretted listening to the people that, oh, kids like you don't go to Notre Dame, because I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. And my dad's viewpoint of it was, well, unless you're a football player, Jewel, and can get a scholarship, we can't afford to send you there. Well, I had a vagina and not a penis, so it didn't really work out. I was like, Dad, that wasn't really the coaching I was looking for, but okay. So I had always regretted not applying there, even for undergraduate, but it was a dream of mine. And so when I had the opportunity to go do my MBA there, because it was a regret that I had, going, gosh, and I got to tell you, it was the happiest 2 years of my life. It's like I made something whole that was such a deep desire and a dream of mine, that I was giddy all the way inside. And I've helped people. I don't care what life stage you're in. I helped a 72-year-old man apply to law school, and he took the LSAT, right? And he practiced law till he was like 85 years old and had a blast doing it. After his wife had died and he raised all his kids, had a bunch of grandkids. This is about no matter what season of life that you're in. And sometimes we can tap into that, sometimes that regret more than we can the dream, because you've got layers upon layers upon layers that have been built up that have hardened us to a certain extent.
No, I completely, wholeheartedly agree. Heard that here. If you can't see the dream, tap into what you wish was different or what you regret. Boop, boop, boop. No, it's true. It's true. It's, it's just like when we say that sometimes pain is more clarifying, like we just, for some reason it sticks. And see it more clearly. So that's great advice.
Well, it's about seeing the gift in the pain,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I always say, like, the reason we have these pains and the reason it's coming up because it's ready to heal.
Yeah.
And so many of us are not in a place of our work lives where we are being fed. It's like we're feeding, we're doing, we're pushing out there, but we personally are not being fed.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that's a major, major part of the equation.
Yeah. And the thing is that I believe that we are at a point where some of that cultural shift will occur. Like with a lot of my clients, and let's say that they're in the middle of, like, they're at a job, they're not sure how they feel about it, they think they might want to change, or if they're entrepreneurs and they're like, yeah, this isn't really working, they forget that an interview is actually a two-way conversation.
Oh, right.
It's not just about
the your annual review. That's a two-way conversation.
Oh yeah. And it's like you have I think what happens is we all get that a little bit of the Oliver Twist syndrome, which is we're so grateful to the organization in a way for, like, having hired us and for the paycheck and for, the benefits, that we subjugate our truth. The things that, like, when you're in a situation, your little spidey senses go off, like, that was not the right thing to do. Or that person is this, like, when things are just not in alignment. And we hesitate, we stop, but it's really an opportunity for a two-way conversation. We should be interviewing organizations the same way that they're kind of interviewing us for that fit.
So we don't. Why? Right? Why do we not do that?
Well, because we've been socialized. Yeah. And we've also been socialized to feel grateful for the opportunity, which is true.
And I absolutely see women do that more than men. Men do a much better job than women walking in and owning their worth and owning what they feel they deserve. Whereas women are just, like, happy to be at the table.
Correct.
And
some of that's carryover, right?
Sure.
We didn't get the right to vote. We didn't get the right to, like, literally in our lifetimes, right? Women could have their own credit cards. You had to have your husband. If you wanted a credit card at the old Marshall Fields, you as a woman were not getting that. No. So it's like there's some shadow carryover. It wasn't that long ago. I think a lot of that is changing. But that's why these conversations are so important, because we have to help people find the pathways to understanding.
So true.
Here's what I'm worth. The way I often share with people is like how much there is to, like, actually cultivate and use is that classic iceberg image. You've seen it, where there's like a portion of the iceberg is above the water, but then there's this big, huge piece that's under the water.
Titanic.
And what I say is that, the part that's above the water is the part that the rest of us see of you, but the part that's under the water is the rest of you. And that deserves to be above the water too. All that value right now is trapped. The articulation, the ability to share, the ability to express is all dragged down there. And that's why we get frustrated and we get angry and we get complacent and we, start to regret. And we feel like there's nothing we can do. And that's not true. You and I both know that's not true. Well, but you have to be what? Brave.
Right. Well, and I know that, so, you mentioned the voice, like, if you find like you're not finding your voice, whether it's in interviews or in reviews or things of that nature, do things that move your voice, or that support your voice. It could just be as easy as, like, sing in the car.
Singing. Yep.
Right? Get the energy moving. I remember, so I did work for years with one of my mentors, 𝘾𝐻𝙧, and he does a lot of energy meditation stuff. And when I was working with him in the first system, and this is where I had lost my voice in some parts of my personal world. And after my first session with him, I wound up with like 20 canker sores in my mouth because it was all the toxins that were stuck around my throat and me not having my voice. Now in business, I had my voice, no problem.
Yeah, no problem.
Mine was happening in my personal world. And it was like, oh my God, the toxicity. Because remember, when we don't use our voice, when we don't be authentic in the world,
when we don't express,
yes, it builds up in our physical bodies.
Yes.
And that's what we don't realize, how so interrelated it is. And, you know, I continue to read books that give a different viewpoint. So like right now I'm reading one about the old Egyptian times. And even then they talked about that it was all about the fourfold part of your being, that it's your physical self, the way you're, the service and your career that you're choosing to express yourself in the world. And so even back then it was all a part of the Egyptian culture that you were to be authentically you in how you served in your work life.
Yeah.
And so many of us are so far from that today.
It's true. And, you know, there's much evidence in indigenous cultures. Asclepios is one of the people originally like considered to be modern medicine, and healing in those days was a holistic event. You went away, but there was massage, there were hot pools, they might send you to watch a play, they might.
I saw that in the Roman baths back then.
Yeah, you know, it's just like there were all these elements that were used to actually treat the individual. And we're starting to see that more now, but.
Well, one of my favorites here in Chicago is 𝐾𝐮𝐵.
There are a lot of people that love 𝐾𝐮𝐵.
Yeah, but there it is, and integrating that. You know, I just spent some time with a chief operating officer of a very large financial firm, and she was talking to me about how she is constantly telling the women that work for her, you just don't ask, the men always do.
Yeah.
I can say no, that it's not in the budget to give you the raise.
Yeah.
But if you don't ask,
yeah,
because this is about you stepping into your greatness. And if you're not doing it, like many times I'll hear people like, well, I didn't get the raise, I didn't get the bonus, because they're just waiting there. And so we go then to a place of being disempowered. So how are those pivot points and shifts and changes in your life supposed to happen when you're not the one stepping into claiming that that's what you desire?
Yeah.
Like we have to choose to come from a place of empowerment and step into it.
We have to. And when we don't, but here's the thing, you got to collect the evidence.
Tell me.
Like I tell people, if you don't believe, like two things. One is, you know, on a spectrum of it's the worst over here to like, oh yes, I can see clearly now and everything's great.
I can see clearly now, the rain is gone.
That's exactly the song that was playing in my head, but I dare not sing it for people. You know, sometimes
I can see all the obstacles in my way.
It's a good song. It's such a good song for that. Maybe you can't believe yet the big vision. Maybe you don't feel it completely, but you also don't want to end up, you know, at the bottom of the pit over here, you know, like disbelieving.
Right.
So we talk about standing in the neutral zone. Just be like, I wonder, I don't know.
Which is the present moment, right?
I don't know exactly how this might play out, but rather than sink myself or try to force myself into believing, I'm just going to try to remain open. And while you're in that open space, keep notes. Notice, collect your evidence, because that's what you're trying to satisfy.
Right.
You're trying to satisfy the evidence. So if you're working for an organization, you feel like you're eligible for a raise and that you deserve it, collect your evidence as you go. Document what you're doing. Document the results so that you have the evidence. It's not like up here like, well, I think I did a good job and I think I didn't. No, it's like, nope, here it is. And I think that helps build the confidence, because sometimes we don't even know. I don't know how many people may have, I used to journal all the time, or I kept a notebook of like what I needed to do and the meetings that I was having. And then I would go back through that thing to write up, you know, things I wanted to share during my review time. And there were things in there I had forgotten. I had done. There were collaborations, there were interactions that I had forgotten about. And if I hadn't had my journal and the notebook and the notes, I would have left more of myself under the water.
Right.
But because I had the notebook, I could raise more of who I am, what I did, why I know I'm deserving of this above the surface of the water. So that's
because you matter.
Yeah, we all matter.
But many of us don't believe that we do.
Yeah.
Which is why we fold into, my word lately has become that we become sheeples, you know, that we just fold it.
What is a sheeple?
A sheeple. It's like you're part of the flock. You're just a sheep. That's just like wherever you're being like,
direct,
guided, like you just go, as opposed to like, maybe I'm supposed to climb that other mountain while all the others go this way. And because some of us are supposed to stay with the flock the whole time, but I would venture to say that most of us are supposed to switch and shift, and we don't. And then we think that these pension plans and these perceived benefits that we thought we were guaranteed, and when they don't turn out the way that we expect them, when likely you've been given a lot of signs through the years that you were supposed to shift, but you didn't, because you're like, but I want that pension. But you can't control whether or not that pension is going to exist or not.
Cannot.
And that's when we create our own suffering patterns. And this is where now's the time for us to really find the courage. I think that's the big component here. To be honest with ourselves. Like when you were saying, find the truth, find your truth.
Right.
And sometimes it's better, keep it to yourself. Why? So the energy behind that can build as opposed to leak out. When we start to talk to a bunch of people about it, we start to like put it out there as opposed to sitting with it within ourselves, we actually create a weakness around it.
It dissipates.
And then we sabotage.
Yeah, because I remember Sonia Choquette once sharing with me, the universe can discern between talking about something you want to create and actually taking action to create it. And that's what you're talking about. Blah, 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 blah. It's still energetically drawing.
Totally.
But it's not going anywhere.
Right.
Not doing anything.
Right.
And that's
it's like, and one of the most beautiful things I think about this virus and this time period is that it's forcing many of us into a quiet space.
Yep.
Whether it's in your home or even the masks, right? It's like you can't really actually hear all the noise because you're like, blah, 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 blah. Like, think of all the metaphors behind all of that.
Yeah.
And this is about going inside.
It is. It's literally and figuratively sit still.
And it'll even be interesting even after the holidays, because many people have chose to redesign their traditional holiday times and how they're spending them.
Yep.
You may find that it feeds your soul a little bit more to do the new way.
Yeah. There are definitely people discovering things.
Yes. And I would just encourage people to just notice those discoveries, even though yet feeling foreign, but yet kind of grounding on some level.
Yep.
Because this is when you're really starting to tune into you and what your truth is right here, right now, because that's the only part that matters.
Yeah, and I would add that discontent is a signal. When we're contented in our lives, we're not bothered. We get up, we do what we're doing, tra-la-la, be on our way. We're contented. But if there is a ring, a wave of discontent in your life in any way, and you know that because you don't like something.
Sure.
Something feels off. You don't like this. That is exactly the signal to change something.
Right.
Something has to change. Right. And it's not to be ignored. It's not to be stuffed down. And what you ask is, what would I prefer? Doesn't mean that you'll get it right away. Doesn't mean that it'll happen, you know, the way you see it happening. It might unfold a completely different way. But the question to ask is, what would I prefer?
And be okay with whatever pops in before you negotiate it away in your mind.
Yep. And to be willing to look at it honestly. Because there might be an answer. You're like, really?
Right. But yet you have a knowing that it's exactly the perfect thing.
Yeah. And that then you get to unwind. If you resist what pops up, you get to unwind why you're resisting. What is it about taking this step, taking this action that I'm afraid or resistant to doing? And you unpeel that.
And I know right now, so many people resist shifting their work life because they're afraid of where is the money going to come from. And we have to know that it's going to always show up when you align with your heart space.
Yeah, and that's another one of those leaps. You know, you and I have experienced it. It's hard to, again, convince someone who hasn't experienced it. So I say, go back to the neutral zone.
Right.
Like, you don't have to believe us, but you also don't have to completely deny it.
Right.
You can test it, try it on your own. And I'm a huge advocate of people examining simultaneously the things that are important to them. Because what we have come to really understand is that even if you're working in a great job, maybe you've even ascended to some senior level, the staying there is not guaranteed. You could literally blink and be out.
Right.
And then feel like your entire identity was tied up in that role, in that organization, with how people perceive you to be in the world. And all I'm saying is, nurture the things that excite you, even as you're working, even as you're doing other things. Like, if I could have earnings on the side, and we talk about that, either invest with people, right? You put your money with someplace, or you start to think about what could be happening over here on the side. It doesn't require 100% of my time. Do I want to write a book? Do I want to teach people something? And I
will tell you that when I start to have people write down the list of what they really desire, people have had job functions in the past where there's attributes of multiple different job functions that they're like, I really loved this time period. And I, and I have people go through an exercise where I have them write those things down, and I have them write down, like, what did they love and what were the people like? And, what would you love to add to that, to create the new? And it shows up in the most amazing packages. So, like, it could be like, I had somebody call me up and said, Julie, you are never going to believe this. Because they always thought that they were going to be leaving their job in the company they've been with for 27 years. And then all of a sudden, because she just considered and started to think outside of the box, that she just wanted something different. And it showed up actually in her actual corporation that she's been at for 27 years. But it's just because she dared to dream the new dream and go, I know I'm cutting edge. I know I'm opening doors. And she always thought it was that she was going to start to be a consultant on the outside and not actually build it from the inside. And then this opportunity came, and somebody decided to bring her into this innovative place inside the corporation that is now feeding her soul. And here's what's funny. 2.5 years later, she's making $130,000 more income per year. And she was being underpaid before.
Yeah, I mean,
it aligned with her heart.
And I have worked with a number of people who feel confused by what they want to do, and have taken them through a similar exercise. It's like, if you could put together your perfect work scenario, what are those elements? And it's not until you pull them out of the ether, you really name them, you pull them from beneath the surface of the water to above the surface of the water, that things can start to gel.
Well, and often people think that they need to sit with somebody else to figure that out. And really, you need to sit with yourself.
Yeah, but with a couple of good questions.
No doubt. There's no doubt. And sometimes it's just asking the question saying, what would feed my heart more from a workplace perspective?
Yep. Yeah.
And you may have to ask that question to yourself 30 days in a row. And then all of a sudden you've opened yourself up, you've opened yourself up, opened yourself up, opened up. And all of a sudden it's like, boop, and then it pops in, you're like, ah. And you have this knowing that it finally opened up, but you have to keep asking the question.
It's a practice.
And even for me, because I've been doing this since 1995, even for me, it's like, what's the next reiteration? What's the next place where this work life goes? And it continues to amaze me how it unpacks and it unfolds. And we just look at amazement as to what each place is.
And it's, the whole idea is just don't park in your life, right?
Right.
Like stagnant water, it's gross.
Ugh.
Right?
Yeah.
It becomes fetid. It's like bad things happen in stagnant water. And it's no different. We know energy needs to be in motion, and the same thing is true about your life.
Right.
We crave newness as humans. We crave refreshing. I mean, that's why so many of us have like crazy shopping habits, because we feel like we need to refresh, or we like the new, or we like freshening up. And sometimes we get these soft addictions because we're not addressing something at our core.
Right.
The shopping or the eating or the excessive running,
the acting out, the emotional acting out,
becomes a surrogate for actually addressing what's really going on. So these questions we're talking about are fundamental for a number of reasons, because it might save you a ton of money or a ton of pounds, something. Well,
and especially us going into the holiday season, right? I always talk about the fact that at this time of year, we're so apt to create what I call a spending hangover. You know, because we act it out through our spending when we're just like unhappy with where we're spending our life force energy. And I would encourage us to become more conscious going into this holiday season, to be conscious to not do that again. Like to actually sit with, what are you feeling discontent with? And I know many of you watching out there that it has a lot to do with your work life, because you're doing it for a paycheck. You're not doing it because it feeds your soul.
Yeah.
And you can have both.
You can. And when we talk about working, we spend so much of our time working. majority of our living time is in the work that we do. And the work that we do is meant to be an expression of who we are. And so many of us are not expressing ourselves.
Right.
And this is back to the idea of choice, right?
Yep.
Which is how we started the conversation.
Yep.
It's like you will always have the power to choose.
Yep.
Choose wisely.
Right.
Choose in alignment, choose in integrity. And then at least you have good information. If you decide to proceed on the path that you're on, then great, you're fully informed.
Mm-hmm.
But don't not ask yourself the questions.
Right. Because that is a choice as well.
Correct.
Good stuff. Well, I know I'm super grateful that you spend some time with us, 𝐀𝐮, to help people on the journey. Tell people about how they can, your Thursdays, I think, are super important for people to start to plug into. If you need some more assistance in your work life, 𝐀𝐻𝐮 can really help you on your journey. So 𝐀𝐻𝐮, tell them more about how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so every Thursday at noon Central Time, I host a free mini workshop. No obligations, no commitments, except to come and explore. And I usually have a topic at the beginning and then open coaching or conversation around what the topic is. But it's free on Thursdays. So if you visit Beyond Blind Spots on social media, Facebook, it's pinned and tagged. The events are pinned and tagged there, or in Instagram, Beyond Blind Spots. You can just hit the link and it'll take you to registration. Not this Thursday though, but every Thursday.
No, not this Thursday. We're going to be celebrating Thanksgiving. Give gratitude to everyone in your world, because you know what? We're all learning and we're all teachers. Yeah. Especially if someone is triggering you, just know they're one of your biggest teachers. And take a step back and say, okay, what's the gift here? Yeah. What should I be grateful for that person who's irritating the crap out of me is
we
actually
have all had one of those.
Oh, or a couple of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me.
Yes, when this is where the shift is to take it from a place of empowerment as opposed to as a victim.
Yep.
And we can step into our power so easily, and we just have to decide to do it. Well, and again, we will be launching, I am giving away my book, Awaken Your Wealth, for free. So if you go to juliemurphy.com and give me your email address, that should be launching here next week. We had a little bit of a glitch this week. I expect it to be this week, but we should have it out next week, and help you on your journey to get you to the next right step.
Yay.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again next Wednesday. Bye.